Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about dating's ups and downs and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Krystine Cardona. She's a first generation Cuban American Miami native who is dedicated to the practice of divorce and family law. She enjoys spending time with her husband, identical twin daughters, Penelope, Olivia, and her two dogs.
Yes.
Krystine, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
Thank you so much. I am a little sick because my kids started daycare recently, so we're sick every other week.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry to hear
otherwise, thank
that.
you. But I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate it. And like I was telling you, I can talk about relationships all day. I literally live it. So it's a pleasure to meet you and be here
Yeah,
with you.
no, definitely. Listen, and today we got a good topic. Is five signs you're in a toxic relationship. So Christine is going to go over that. But before we do, so Christine, what was your journey like? How did you get to practice divorce and family law? What was Christine Cardona's journey like?
I had absolutely no idea I was going to be an attorney when I was little. Like if you would have told me that, I would have been like, "Really?" I just what I did know is that I really like advocating like women's rights and advocating for women's rights.
Okay.
Um, which led me to just know, okay, well, I'd like to pursue something in that path. I
Mhm.
went to law school and my favorite class was family law. It just naturally, I was like, I love reading about this, not a problem. Um, and then my first one of my jobs during law school was clerking at a family law firm, and I loved it, and I've been doing it ever since. So, and I do advocate, of course, I now advocate for both women and men, um, but it is very challenging, but very gratifying, and I genuinely love what I do. It's fun.
Well, listen, as I forgot who it was. I think it was Warren Buffett said that if you love what you do, it's not considered work. You're having,
Yeah.
well, I wouldn't say you're having fun when when it comes to
No,
divorces, but
right.
yeah,
No, the subject is not fun, but I do like seeing my clients go like I try to my biggest thing is trying to get them to a place where they're in a better place than when they first came to my office. And I
right.
want them to feel empowered in whatever situation they're in and get them to a better place. So I do like that. Um, I recently had a client that didn't see his kids for like 7 months.
Oh
I can't
wow.
talk about the details of the case. It's
Sure,
still
sure,
on.
sure. I wasn't gonna ask you, but yeah, I
Really?
get you. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. But we really recently saw pictures like of the children and how they were doing and they look so happy. And so it's nice to see that. It's nice to actually feel like you're making a difference in a positive way. So
Right.
yeah.
So, since today topic is a good one, the five signs you're in a toxic relationship. Christine, in your practice and in your everyday life, is it when it comes to toxic relationships, is it that we're not seeing the signs that are there? And we'll go over the five signs in,
Sure.
in a minute, but are we not seeing the signs or are we ignoring it? Um, do we want to rock the boat in that relationship? We don't want to rock the boat. We do want to, it seems like we see people and I've been in a couple of relationships that, I thought it was toxic. It took a while to realize it because I sat down and thought about it. Is that the case that we don't really reflect on who we're with at the moment? Is that one of I mean,
So
you're,
it's a
you're a
little
professional at this, so please.
well, I'm not just so you know, I am not a licensed therapist or psychologist, but we
Right,
do
right.
this constantly because by the time you're coming to my office, even though I am married and I believe in the institution of marriage, I don't believe in a toxic marriage or any toxic relationship. And
Right.
so one of the first things, can you reconcile? Have you tried therapy? Have you tried counseling? It's a loaded question because a lot of different variables come into play. So for instance, I'll ask them, how was it when you were dating? And oftentimes the partner is doing things that they were doing before. But sometimes you ignore it because a lot of times you think they'll change.
Mm,
And there are certain things that they're not going to change. And people don't change unless they want to. You cannot force them to change. And there are certain things that they cannot change unless they seek professional help.
mhm.
And again, if they don't seek professional help, then you're kind of stuck in that rut. And again, you cannot change them. You can only change the way you react to it. Or if you decide, you know what, this is not healthy for me or the children, then I need to get out of this situation. Maybe we're better off as co parents, or maybe we're just better off not seeing each other at all. We don't have kids. Um, so, other things that I've seen are if someone grows up with parents or like family of origin that's toxic, they just assume that this is normal,
Mm,
that this type of behavior is tolerated, is normal. And so by the time I get to again, I get to my office, I'm like, no, name calling as an example. It's not one of my five, but I'll get there.
right.
Name calling. Oh, you're, this, that's not appropriate, and you may have seen that unfortunately growing up, but that's not healthy. And so
Mm,
sometimes it takes a neutral professional, like a therapist, or maybe not so neutral, but a professional that doesn't know their significant other that just can can tell you, listen, this is not okay, no matter who it is. Um, and if they grew up listening to that, then they thought, well, I saw my parents, I just thought that was like maybe my part of my culture. Maybe that's just my family. And then it takes that therapist or the counselor, whomever you speak with, to be like, no, that's not healthy, you know, um, it's dismissive or it's disrespectful, and you have to set those boundaries for yourself. And that's when you realize, wait a minute, it's not okay, and I need to cut this off. And I
mhm.
don't want to pass this on to my kids or the next generation if you do have kids, because your kids are watching.
Right,
Um, if you do have kids, obviously.
right.
So,
Is it do you think culture comes into play in a lot of these issues when it comes to a toxic relationship where you might be, well, I don't want to name a specific group or anything like that, but would an environment and
mhm.
culture come into play in certain situations like a bad relationship that you're not just seeing or you don't want to let go because you think it might be the norm?
um, I have a
I know
bias.
that's a loaded question.
Again, every culture has, there's some things that you just generally didn't realize. It may not be a cultural thing. Maybe it's just your family of origin.
Right.
Um, I'm Hispanic, so sorry, I need a call. Excuse me.
That's okay.
I I'm in Miami, so my demographic is, you know, a lot of my clients are Hispanic, but I can't
Right.
say it's due to the nature of the culture. What I did see growing up, and it's been less and less, is that machista mentality, where like, you know, the in unfortunately it was the man, right? Stereotypically, let's say in our grandparents' era,
Yeah.
where like they'd be sitting down and like the wife would have to serve them water or do this or do that and treat them in whatever way. And then now things have changed because women
Right.
are now educated going into the workforce, and they don't have to remain in that relationship. They can get out from under that and leave it if they need to. And the statistics, the last time I checked, and of course, do not quote me on this because this may have changed, obviously, but the for petitions for divorce are like 70% women. If they're educated, it goes to 80%.
I've heard that
Yeah.
too from other people that most women initiate divorces. I didn't know about the one with 70% and the other was 80. I always heard the 80% one. So yeah, yeah, I definitely heard that too. So yeah, so continue. I'm sorry.
No, that I think generally not necessarily the name calling. I just
Right.
what I have seen, at least in my culture specifically, is and not necessarily I mean, certain members of like my grandparents and great grandparents, even my grandpa, for instance, he would cook, he would clean. But at that
Mhm.
time, I was like, why are you in the kitchen? Why are you not sitting down? It was a different mentality. Now my
Yeah.
husband cooks, cleans, and helps with the kids, and it's normalized. At least in our household, it's normalized. And um, most, I would say, in my generation, it's changing. So,
I wanted to cut in for a second,
sure.
because like even if I'm dating someone and she does the cooking, automatically I do the dishes. I don't. I just volunteer. I don't even ask. I'll say, hey, I got it. Because she went out of her way to cook and make a nice meal. Always a good home cooking. All
Yes.
men love that. So
Yeah, everyone. I love that too.
yeah,
Great.
there you go. So yeah, I definitely did the dishes, and I remember growing up. I spent more time with my grandparents than I did with my father and mother. But when I did spend a little time with them, yeah, my father didn't do anything but just sat there after working and maybe a soda, and he's watching TV. So yeah, so continue. I just wanted to get that in.
No,
Sorry for the tangent. Yeah.
no, no, no. I think that's very relevant, and maybe that was a traditional norm at that time.
Right.
Um, but things are changing because now if you're in the workforce and then you come home to then clean and cook and take care of the kids, that's another job. And so, the roles have to be more equal in that
Right.
respect. Um, but yeah, I completely agree. If my husband cooks, I clean or in some way. It's not going to be equal always, maybe they're having a long day at work and so you compensate it a different way. Or
Right.
maybe you're doing most of the household chores one week. All right, well the next week they pick it up. But the point is that you feel in the relationship that you're providing some sort of value, and that
Mhm.
could be in terms of um, help around the house. But the fact that one person is solely the provider and the other one has to serve them constantly and feel like they're a servant, that's changing.
Right.
And that's what like the machista kind of role in the movies or like yeah,
Yeah.
in your show. So
Yeah, I know what you mean. We're
exactly.
talking with Krystine Cardona, Esquire. Today's topic is five signs you're in a toxic relationship, and we'll get that to that in a minute. Christine, you make a good point that things are changing with both men and women. It seems, I never thought about it this way, that toxic could be normal if you grew up that way. You saw that, you
Mhm.
saw that on TV, you were around it all the time.
Right.
Um, and I think more and more women are fighting back. And I'm not talking about like physically, but in terms of, hey, don't talk to me that way.
Right.
Don't treat me that way. And even some men, because there's some men that could unfortunately be simps and as
Absolutely.
they call it, beta males now, the new terms I've been hearing,
There
So
are.
yeah, so go ahead. Yeah.
No, I have to say, and I'm just talking about one gender, but I
Yeah.
have seen my some of my male clients where the women are gaslighting or
Mm,
they're putting them down or and they're being disrespectful. Um, and most of the time the men just like, I just don't want to deal with I just don't want to deal with them. But the reality is that is still very toxic.
yeah.
Um, and the reality is, at least for women, now that's why it's so important for either gender, whichever. But have a backup and have a backup plan. Be financially independent. If you want to be a homemaker, be a homemaker, but have a backup plan. You
Yeah.
know, make sure that in the event something happens, you can go and get a job somewhere because that was the issue. That's an issue with a lot of relationships. They stay in a toxic relationship because they can't leave. Because let's say their partner only gives them a certain amount of money for allowance or doesn't let them see family or friends. They can't get out from under it.
Right.
Um, and so they're kind of stuck. It reminds me, I don't know if you've seen the series Maid, or maybe it's Maids on Netflix.
No, I heard of it, but no, I haven't seen it. Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's trying to get out of that situation. He wasn't necessarily physically abusive, but he would punch the wall right next to her, or he would do name calling and yell at her.
Oh, wow.
Extremely toxic, extremely toxic. And she did get to leave with their daughter. It was very difficult because when your partner, and I'm saying partner because it can happen in same-sex couples or hetero sexual couples, but generally, if you are not allowed to work because they don't like it or they're controlling you, they're controlling the finances, you're not allowed to have a support system because they don't like you hanging out with friends or your
Yeah.
family, you're isolated. And that's where they want it. That's what they want because then you're easier to manipulate if you're isolated.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's why it's good for you to have a way out so you're not stuck there.
Yeah, I've seen where I think my mom, and I'll go back to that. When she and my father got divorced, like I said, I grew up with my grandparents and I was maybe 12, 13, 14. I can't remember the exact time, but I felt that my mom was kind of lost
Mhm.
because she relied on my father to do everything. He was the breadwinner and all that. She took care of the kids and everything. Because at
Mhm.
that time I have four siblings. And even though, like I said, I grew up with my grandparents, but I was around at times. But I saw that it was such a different and when I heard more stories that he was toxic, he was this machismo guy that it had to be his way or no way, or as they say, my way or the highway. So Krystine, again, going back to these type of relationships, um, And I harp back on it because it seems like sometimes we don't want to let go of that relationship because we might be afraid to be alone again, or like you just mentioned, now we have to start all over. And do we have
Right,
a backup plan? Especially whether you're a man or a woman, it's possible that if the
right.
woman got the money, but you got maybe the looks or the sex is good, now
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you know with that, but we won't talk about that. So, but yeah, but you get what I'm trying to say.
right. Then you may not want to leave, or you're too scared to leave. And
Yeah.
I see that happen all the time. There are clients that come in, and I know that other attorneys have had this issue where, not issue, but they've seen this where the client doesn't even know how to write a check because they
Oh,
relied on their
wow.
partner so much. So they are very heavily dependent on them. You're
Gotcha.
dependent on someone, which is fine as long as you have a backup. But the concern is that you're dependent and your relationship is toxic, then you need to be very careful, very careful.
Okay.
And on that note, I haven't set the five.
Yeah,
The
no, I
oh,
was say I wanted to talk about that as soon as we
okay,
finish this
you got it. Yeah,
particular. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I wanted to talk about, so don't be dependent on someone, because you always got to have a backup plan. And I love that because
yeah,
you know what, it could set you back years if, like you said, you had a client that didn't know how to write a check, and
right.
yeah, to
Not
imagine
even
that
that.
is scary. Yeah.
It's they don't know where the bank accounts are. They don't know what's in
Oh,
the joint
geez.
account. They don't know
Right.
when to get paid because they let their significant other handle the finances, and that's okay.
Right.
If you don't wanna do the finances, that's perfectly fine, but be aware of where the accounts are,
Right.
generally aware of what's in the account. You don't wanna be caught by surprise, and what if they liquidate the account? Then what are you gonna do? When they take all the
Right.
money in a joint account, they take all the money and they run. You don't wanna be caught in that
Yeah,
whole
I read stories about that, and it's like horrifying. So, okay. So I know everybody's been waiting for the for the five signs. So let's
Yes,
start, if you want, from five to one, if that works for you.
sure. So, um, unable to be your authentic self. So if you find yourself tiptoeing and you're kind of walking on eggshells, that should give you a red flag.
Mm,
I mean, obviously, the most red flags are physical abuse, financial abuse, psychological abuse. I'm going to give you a couple of signs that are not so apparent, but if you
okay.
feel it in your gut, your intuition, listen to it. You'll
Okay.
know. So again, unable to be your authentic self, you feel like you're walking on eggshells. Which goes to the second one, which is avoid speaking in case it backfires. You're afraid to give out your opinion constantly.
Wow. Okay.
Tiptoeing around their emotions to avoid conflict.
That would be number three.
Yes.
Okay. So wait a minute.
I
Tiptoeing.
have like 10.
Was that? Oh no, it's okay. You could
I
go.
have
You
so
could go
many.
through.
I'm like, I can just go down the list. Unable to be your authentic self, right?
Avoid speaking.
Avoid speaking in case it backfires.
Yeah.
Tiptoeing around their emotions to avoid conflict.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
Yep. Go ahead.
name calling. That is one where it's not healthy. And I don't just, you know, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. How is that helpful? It's demeaning, it's disrespectful, and it's not healthy. And then the last one is control. And I say
Mhm.
that because I have it with like not allowing relationships. You're not allowed to have, let's say you want to hang out with family and they're like, why are you hanging out with them? Or friends. Um, so controlling the relationship with family and friends or controlling whether you can work,
Mm.
or limiting work, which sounds crazy, but it happens all the time where I do have clients that say, well, he didn't really want me to work. Why? You know, don't get me wrong. If you have a newborn at home and you can't find a nanny, yes, of course. I understand one partner may need to stay home at this point. There's a
Right.
reason. But otherwise, why are they limiting your employment unless they want to potentially control your financial independence? And so that
Wow.
control factor, whether it's with friends, relationships, money, I would say that's a sign. There's something off there. There's like a red flag.
Is there jealousy involved, to be that
Oh yes.
controlling?
Yes, yes. That's like, yeah, there's so many, honestly.
Right.
The jealousy, at first, when you're first dating, like, oh, that's cute. To a certain extent, maybe like, oh, look, he cares. No. don't substitute that with control. You know, um,
Mm,
I feel like sometimes I've heard, you know, um, let's say friends and family, like, oh, um, maybe there was another person looking at them when they went out. And so they almost appreciated that their significant other noticed and was like, oh, so and so's checking you out. Okay, well, yes, but if he's constantly doing that and it's constantly an issue and he's getting into fights over it, I mean, that's
yeah.
not okay.
Okay, so we got unable to be your authentic self,
Yes,
right? With and you avoid speaking in case it backfires.
right.
You tiptoeing around certain issues to avoid the conflict.
Yes.
Uh, which this one is which I call number two, name calling.
Yes.
It's funny because I didn't even thought about that. So you talking about if somebody says, "Oh my God, you're stupid, you're an idiot," or whatever it is,
I think
uh,
that's
it's
it's
just whatever it is. It's name
bad.
calling. It's just not cool.
Yeah, I don't think it's healthy. Not just me, just the
Anybody,
when I
yeah,
see a client and they send me, let's say, screenshots of the significant other constantly. I mean, listen, we're humans, we get into fights. If you tell me you have a perfect relationship, you're lying. Okay, everyone has something. And
right,
you work
right,
through it, and that's fine. That's fine. And maybe when you're angry, you'll say a name and then you apologize later. But if it's constant name calling, you're an effing idiot, you're this, you're that, it's just constant. That's that's unhealthy. They're just constantly demeaning you, like they're disrespecting you constantly. Especially, I mean, it's cringe worthy when it's like in front of friends and family. I was watching a show, and in that show, the boyfriend had said something like, "Oh, so and so, such an effing idiot," and it was like a bunch of people around. It's just cringe worthy, and
yeah,
unfortunately, the girlfriend just assumed that that was normal because her parents. She's like, "Oh yeah, no, I thought that was normal." It took another cast member, another female on the show to say like that's not okay. This is now becoming abusive. So
right,
there's obviously a spectrum. If it happens, I mean this is just my personal opinion. I am not a
sure,
therapist or licensed, mental health counselor or anything, but people get into fights. They say things they don't mean once every so often. I can understand that, but
hmm,
when it's constant name calling, why put up with something like that?
right,
It's
right,
degrading. It's disrespectful, and if you have kids, um, then those your kids are watching that, and then they assume that that's okay.
right. Because if they see the parents doing it, they're like, "Oh, okay, this is
So they
normal."
will tolerate it. They then tolerate it in their
Yeah.
next relationship, and then they find somebody just as toxic.
Right.
So
And the number one, I call it number one. You might call it number five, but I call it number
right,
one because it's real. It's to me eye opening. It's controlling the relationship. You can't have. I'm
yeah,
not saying you can't have friends, but you're having friends and family. You want to hang out with them, but then the significant other says, "Oh, why?" or whatever. They make any excuse not for that person to go out.
right. And of course, there's a difference. If you want to go with your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend, yes, obviously they're going to
Yeah,
have an issue.
that's a
But
definitely a red flag.
right. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Right. But I have heard of, certain clients. Again, these are my clients that I recognize very quickly that we're trying to get out of a
Yeah.
toxic relationship. That's why they're in my office. Um, and their significant other would get upset if like, oh, I went to my mom's house and he got upset. Um, why would you get upset about her going to her mom's house or
Yeah.
her sister's house? It's just again, it's almost like they don't want um their significant other to talk about it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have that mentality. All I know is that that is a huge red flag for me.
Right.
For potential domestic violence later. That's exactly what goes off in my mind. So just be mindful of that. If they're controlling to that extent, it's off. It's
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, just become aware of what's going on. And I think that's a lot of things too, Christine. I guess a lot of people are not aware of it, or they just, maybe and some of these five signs, they just might let it go because they're like, oh, you know what, he does treat me well. And I think some people overlook those five signs because maybe that there might be times, and you could uh, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that they might think that the good overcomes the bad. Does that ever come into play?
Absolutely. You know, most of the cases, hindsight's 2020. I thought he was
Right.
gonna change, or she. Okay, this goes both. Every time I say she, please
I
note
know
it could have meant
it could be
it could
him. Yeah.
go either way. Right. Um, they think that the person will change, or maybe they just had a bad day, or they had a bad week, or they had, their parent is sick. There's always an excuse, but then you see that it just continues and it's a routine and it's not gonna change.
Right.
Um, so at that point, they have to do a cost benefit analysis. How long do you want to put up with this before you realize it isn't healthy for um your mental health?
Yeah,
Or
no, that's always the biggest thing. It's your mental health. Well, first of all, Christine, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I don't want to say I had fun because maybe the topic wasn't fun, but I had fun talking to you. So talk more about your practice.
right. So I do divorce and family law. When I first met my husband, he's like, "What exactly is family law?" He thought I drafted wills and estate and trust planning. I wish I did, because we're in Florida.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
so family law is specifically paternity and everything encompassing like child custody, relocation, prenups,
Okay.
which is popular. And by the way, if you don't enter into a prenup, you're stuck with Florida law or whatever law you're in that state.
Okay.
So if you want to try to avoid that and set up your own parameters, enter into a prenup. It's a lot cheaper than you think, or a lot more economical. I guess that's the better way to put it.
Well, you
Um,
hope that the other person is okay with it, though.
right. You can have those conversations. And
Right,
if
right, right.
upset about it, that's a red flag. Because when you enter into the marriage, you're entering into like a it's like a business.
Yeah.
So would you ever enter into a business or start up a business with someone who doesn't want to talk about like, hey, how are we going to set up our business? Like what bank are we going to use? What about if we have to pay expenses? I mean, those are just general questions that
Questions.
they
Yeah.
should feel comfortable answering. That's another red flag.
Okay.
So that's just those conversations should be had anyway. But yes, so divorce and family law meaning paternity, anything related to custody, international custody issues, child support, prenup, postnup, and everything under that umbrella. So
Do you cover just only Florida? Do you
yes,
cover just Florida? Okay.
yes, I am only licensed in Florida. And yes, let me just put that out there. And
Yeah.
every state there may be different laws. So I know that um, California, for example, is a community property state, totally different. There may
Okay.
be certain similarities, but definitely consult with an attorney licensed in that state. And if you
Okay.
Google, make sure you pay attention to what you're reading because it may not apply to, let's say, Florida, for instance. So,
Right. No, I gotcha. And anything else you want to promote? A future book you got coming out? Because I think you have at least one or two books in you.
I wish I had one or two, but I do have 9 myths about divorce coming out, but it's like a 2-page document that I will be publishing at some point. No, if anybody is interested or curious or wants to be empowered with information, because that's the whole point. If you want to meet with me to discuss your relationship or, if you have any questions, the best thing is knowledge. Like, when elementary school, knowledge is power. I still
Right.
believe
Yeah.
and you don't need to necessarily do anything, but you do need to know your rights in the state that you live in. So I am in Miami, Florida. My phone number is 305-549-8111. So that's my office number. And anybody is welcome to call, set up a consult, and I can try to provide you with um, a solution to whatever issue they have relating to family law.
And your
In
website?
Florida.
Yeah, right. And only in
Yeah,
Florida,
in
guys.
Florida,
Only in
please.
Florida.
Right. If it's not in Florida, you can reach out to me. I will likely recommend you to somebody who practices in your state. So my website's www.kcpafamilylaw.com.
All right, sounds good. Well, again, Christine, I appreciate so much of your time that you took to talk to People on Dating. I really, really appreciate it.
No, it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope you guys or you have a great day. This has been
No,
fun.
you too. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Well, everyone, that was Krystine Cardona, and you can find her at kcpafamilylaw.com. That's kcpafamilylaw.com. Christine, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. Much appreciated. You can find me on peopleondating.com. That's peopleondating.com. Check out our past shows and check out our blog. Also, when you get a chance, please go to Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, leave a review. Tell us how we can make this show better. Also, please go to YouTube, People on Dating. Please subscribe, like it, share it, whatever you can. Please, please, please subscribe. Also, you can find me on Google Podcasts and on Spotify. Anyway, on behalf of People on Dating, I'm Will Morales. Until next time, thanks everybody. Have a great day. And remember, it's just a conversation, no judgment. Thank you.